Michael Jackson didn't buy Neverland Ranch as a home. He bought it as a closed private compound, more than 2,700 acres, with its own amusement park, zoo, and complete physical isolation from neighbors. The property functioned as a self-contained world with its own rules. Normal social boundaries, everyday routines, and external oversight didn't apply there. But after a series of public scandals, Neverland stopped being just real estate. The property lost its investment appeal and sat on the market for years, even at steep discounts. The issue wasn't the condition of the buildings, and it wasn't the price. The problem was the associations attached to the place itself. Neverland became a case study in how private space doesn't isolate reputational risk. It embeds it into land, structures, and location. This is the story of a property that stopped being an asset and became a toxic one. Let's start at the beginning. Michael Jackson purchased Neverland Ranch in 1988. At the time, it wasn't a celebrity estate or an architectural landmark. It was a standard ranch in Santa Barbara County, California. The decision had little to do with design or prestige. It was about isolation, vast acreage, no immediate neighbors, and controlled access. After the purchase, Neverland was rapidly rebuilt. At that point, it stopped functioning as an estate in the traditional sense. It began operating as a closed private compound, a space where the owner could avoid public life entirely, operate outside normal daily routines, and control who entered the property and when. Once the main reconstruction phase was complete, Neverland no longer consisted of a single residence. It became a collection of functionally distinct zones spread across large distances. The property wasn't compact, it operated as a dispersed system. The central area included the main residence, auxiliary buildings, and interior courtyards. The house itself wasn't architecturally distinctive and didn't reflect classic luxury estate design. Its role was utilitarian, one location among many within the larger site. A separate entertainment zone was built nearby. It included a permanent amusement park with mechanical rides, a Ferris wheel, and an internal train system. These weren't temporary installations. They were connected to permanent infrastructure and required continuous staff maintenance. Adjacent to that was a zoo with enclosures for exotic animals. The animal areas were physically separated from residential and guest routes and had their own logistics, veterinary care, and dedicated staff. And this wasn't decorative. It functioned as a full operational subsystem of the property. The estate also included a private movie theater. It served as an internal leisure facility and was never open to the public. Access to it was controlled in the same way as other restricted zones on the property. Neverland had an extensive internal network of roads, paths, and restricted corridors. The property was divided into sectors with different access levels. Movement between them wasn't free and depended on a person's status: guest, staff, or security. Staff either lived on-site or worked in rotating shifts. Dedicated housing, service buildings, and restricted areas were built specifically for them. In practice, Neverland operated with its own internal support infrastructure. The security system went far beyond basic protection. It regulated access, tracked movement, and controlled how long guests and staff were allowed to remain on the property. Neverland functioned under internal rules that didn't require outside oversight in everyday operations. As a result, the estate didn't fit into any standard real estate category. It wasn't a residence, it wasn't a resort, and it wasn't a public venue. Neverland operated as a fully autonomous private compound, designed for continuous life inside a single controlled territory, without the need to engage with the outside world. That structure remained in place through the early 1990s, until the property first entered the public record in connection with events that permanently changed its status. In 1993, allegations of sexual abuse involving a minor were made against Michael Jackson. The claims came from the family of a boy who had been present on the grounds of Neverland Ranch. The critical point was that the alleged incidents were tied directly to the property itself. Neverland was identified as the primary location where, according to the accusers, the events took place. After the allegations became public, California law enforcement conducted a search of Neverland Ranch. Investigators worked on site, documenting access points, interior spaces, and movement routes across the property. It was the first time a private compound of this kind became the subject of an open state investigation. The criminal case did not result in a court verdict. In 1994, the parties reached an out-of-court financial settlement. Michael Jackson did not admit wrongdoing, and the case was closed without a trial. Legally, the matter ended there. But Neverland was no longer a neutral location. The search itself, and the public record it created, permanently placed the property into the media and legal landscape. Later, between 2003 and 2005, a separate criminal trial took place involving different allegations. Although Michael Jackson was acquitted, Neverland was again referenced as a symbolic location, even when specific claims were not directly linked to the property. From that point forward, the estate was no longer perceived as ordinary real estate. It became a place defined by public controversy, regardless of legal outcomes. After the first major investigation, Neverland began to change, not only in reputation, but also in administration. Parts of the property were gradually taken out of operation, not due to physical deterioration, but because of regulatory and insurance constraints. The amusement park and the zoo required separate permits, regular inspections, and ongoing compliance with safety regulations. As public scrutiny increased, those requirements became stricter. Maintaining the full infrastructure grew increasingly difficult, even with sufficient financial resources. Over time, parts of the amusement park were dismantled or placed into storage. The zoo was gradually reduced, and animals were transferred to other facilities. Neverland began losing its functional integrity well before it disappeared from public life altogether. A lesser-known detail is that, in its later years, the property was no longer fully under Michael Jackson's control. Due to financial obligations, portions of the asset came under creditor oversight. In practical terms, Neverland stopped being a freely managed property even before formal attempts to sell it. In 2008, management of the estate was transferred to third-party entities. Decisions about maintenance, staffing, and access were no longer made directly by the owner. At that point, Neverland ceased to function as a personal space, even on a formal level. Another critical factor is that Neverland was never technically optimized for sale. That is why, after Michael Jackson's death, Neverland did not become a conventional inherited asset. It remained a problematic holding, not something to pass on, but something that needed to be removed from the balance sheet with minimal losses. Only years later was the property renamed and formally distanced from the Neverland brand. But a change of name didn't amount to a true reset. The site remained recognizable regardless of legal or branding decisions. That's the broader point. In large private compounds, risk doesn't come only from events. It comes from structure. Neverland was too specialized, too isolated, and too well known to ever return to the category of ordinary real estate. Neverland didn't disappear. It simply stopped functioning as real estate. This isn't a story about a mansion. It's a story about how private space can turn property into a toxic asset.